This big ash tree fell in my yard during a storm a few years ago. I like a nice piece of ash as much as the next guy, so I cut a big chunk of the remaining stump off with a chainsaw. I wanted to make some short boards out of this using my table saw that I can hopefully use to make some guitar necks or bodies sometime in the future. Stick around and I'll show you how I did it. I made this box out of some scrap pressboard siding, but any kind of plywood will work. The box needs to be square, so I started by cutting the two smaller end pieces as square as possible and glued the box together. The idea is to screw the big chunk of wood into this box and use the box as a sled on my table saw, guiding it along the fence to get at least one flat edge on the piece of wood. The box needs to be a little less than twice the cutting height of the table saw blade so that I can cut out boards as thick as possible. You'll see what I mean by that in a minute. I built mine about 5.5 by 5.5 since the max cutting height of my 10-inch saw blade is about 3¼ inches. The length of the box needs to be the length of the board you're trying to cut. Mine is about 28.5 inches long. I put a couple of screws in both ends of the box to hold the chunk of wood steady while I push it through the saw. This chunk of wood needs to fit inside the box, so I made sure the thickness of the wood was close using my chainsaw. But it's still a little too long. So I marked a line and I'll use my bandsaw to cut it to fit. I could have used a chainsaw for this, but I didn't feel like it. And hey, if you like videos like this, like, comment, share, and subscribe. It'll really help out my channel. Now that the wood fits in the box, I secured it with the screws. I adjusted the table saw fence so I could cut off the rough part of one side of the wood to get a nice flat side. With the box sled against the fence, I'll cut halfway through on one side of the wood. This ash is still a little wet, having just come off the stump. And it was a bit of a slow cut for my old table saw, but it made it through. Next, I flipped the box over and ran it through the table saw again, keeping the backs of the box flush against the fence. This is a good piece of ash, and I'm happy to now have one flat edge. I removed the wood from the box, and in doing so actually damaged my box. I'm definitely going to have to rebuild one of these. This chunk of wood was pretty heavy, so I roughly cut it in half to make it a little lighter to work with, using the newly cut flat edge against the top of the table saw. I put these pieces back in the box, flat edge down, and continued cutting until I had one square corner on the block of wood. With one square corner, I could then use the table saw and fence to cut the board square on all sides. It's definitely not the nicest ash I've ever seen, but it was free from a stump in my backyard and I had fun doing it. The boards didn't come out perfectly square, I'm sure due to user error, but one square corner is all I need to run these through a table saw or planer and get them in good usable condition. If you like woodworking and learning new things, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.